Beta Upsilon Chi, Bucks, presents Man to Men, the premier audio journal for men who live faithfully and lead courageously. I'm Jared Musgrove, and today we welcome, well, I don't know if today's guest needs an introduction, guys, but I'm going to give it a shot, Steven Curtis Chapman. He is the most awarded artist in Christian music history. He's a devoted husband and father. He's a voice for the vulnerable, and he's a man whose faith has been tested and refined. We're talking today about his Speechless 25 tour, a dream fulfilled at the Grand Ole Opry, and the story behind Show Hope. Steven, welcome to Man to Men.
Thank you. Thanks, Jared. Great to be with you, sir.
Well, it's great to talk to you because, and I didn't share this as we were pre-gaming, your Speechless album is perhaps maybe the most important single album to me personally.
Oh.
It got me through a lot of hard times, man. It really did. Just like some grief, some moving, some new adventures, if you will. So it's fun. It's fun to get to talk with you about that and just dive in on a little bit of the history as it turns 25 this year. When you look back at that season of songwriting, man, what comes to mind?
You know, this is crazy. I just got a message this morning, text message from a friend of mine, and this will be a little bit of a rabbit trail, but it's just fascinating. Those. It's fascinating that you just were asking about it because so a guy named Jim Hauser, who was my manager for several years, now works with a radio station, K-Love, and is a executive there. But prior to that, he grew up, got in Christian radio, was a Christian radio DJ. Then actually was with Focus on the Family when he was right out of college. Ended up at Sparrow Records, which is who the majority of my records were made with. Sparrow Records, who would then sell to EMI, and then anyway, now it's Capital CMG or something, but it's Sparrow Records still to me, and that's really who is responsible for so much of the music that I got to make over the years, getting that music out, promoting it, radio departments, getting the songs to on the charts and all of that stuff. And Jim took that role as the radio guy at Sparrow for several years. So many of my number one songs and songs on the radio, he was responsible for. And he was texting me this morning because we've been talking back and forth a lot about this coming Speechless tour and how special that album was. And he was reminding me, and you just asking about the songwriting process. He said, if you'll remember, he said, your album prior to that was an album called Signs of Life. And it was an album that was very, very different. I went, I leaned heavily into my guitar playing, kind of blues influence.
Yeah, had some bluegrass, and
swampy. There were. In fact, he was reminding me that one of the songs, "Lord of the Dance," this is still one of my favorite songs to play live, just because it's got this really fun, cool guitar riff. It's
it's a great song. That was my first album I had of yours, actually.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
So, I love that album.
So that album as well. So it was, I had gone. I just. As musicians do, I'm listening to different stuff. I get influenced. I'm listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan. I'm hearing all these cool blues guitar licks. I'm thinking, how could I incorporate those into, what I do? Cause that's, I grew up with a deep love for the guitar, bluegrass music, blues, anything that focuses on guitar. So I had done the Signs of Life album and had the song Lord of the Dance, which he somehow managed to get that song up the charts, even though a lot of Christian radio at that time they were listening to it going, man, it's really cool, but it's pretty rock. It's pretty kind of bluesy. But that's not the kind of music we typically play, but it's Steven Curtis Chapman. We play a lot of his music. So he said it was a fight, but it was a fun fight because people were, kind of stretching the boundaries a little bit of Christian radio, which I've kind of did for a lot of years,
Thank you for
Adventure. You're welcome. Sent them The Great Adventure, and they're like, that sounds kind of like rock and roll. That's got some pretty loud electric guitars, but it's Steven Curtis Chapman, so I guess it's safe.
Right?
It was somehow I was able to kind of thread that needle a little bit, and so he had sort of fought Lord of the Dance up the charts just because of the sound of it and the kind of the bluesy sort of vibe. And he said I called him, so I was writing songs for a new album. And he said he remembers me calling, and he just literally this morning texted me and said, do you remember the conversation? You called me and said, hey, I'm starting to work on some new songs. I had this idea. because I had been meeting with my pastor and a couple of men that I would meet with on a regular basis, which I love that we're doing this man to men conversation, because this was important in my life throughout the journey to have men, who just would journey with me, iron sharpening iron, and had that, certainly women as well, and none more than my wife, but to have a group of guys just in the foxhole, because it is a battle, continues to be. And so I remember sitting with a group of guys, two or three guys who were just very important in my journey at that season, particularly, and talking and talking about whatever. And I remember one of the guys saying, Steven, can I encourage you? You ever just stop talking? And I think his words were "shut up," in a loving, kind brother way. Do you ever just shut up?
Yeah.
And just listen and just try to take in, kind of what God, who He is, what He's doing. You're always trying to figure it out and explain it. He said sometimes maybe just sit in it, and even in our time here together. And it was that in a conversation with Scotty Smith, my pastor, dearest friend forever, talking about his words were gospel astonishment. He said sometimes just being in awe of God and allowing ourselves to sit in that, because He knew me and He's very similar. Going to try to explain it, going to try to put words to it. He says sometimes there just aren't words, and that's okay. In fact, that's the essence of the gospel, the wonder, the mystery. You're not going to figure it out. Can you still embrace it? Let it embrace you. All of that. So that's where this idea of speechless came from, which was a joke to my wife, because as you will learn, already are, that's not a word that's often associated with Steven Curtis Chapman.
Yeah.
Speechless. She laughed. I said, I got a song, a whole album. I think I'm going to call it Speechless. She just said, yeah, right. You, Steven Curtis Chapman, Speechless. 2 words don't belong in the same sentence. So I start writing some songs, getting the idea for the song Speechless. And my friend, back to Jim Hauser, the radio guy, he said, I called him, I guess, because we didn't have text messaging back then. And I said, hey, I'm starting to put new songs together. What do you think musically? Because you're the radio guy who's fought so hard for this album, Lord of the Dance and Signs of Life, which the whole thing had kind of a bluesy sort of thing to it. And he said, do you remember what I told you? Can you give me 10 Let Us Praise? Because Let Us Pray, that was on the Signs of Life album, that was a shoe-in for him at radio. That was an easy sell because it was fun, and it was, it was major chords. It didn't have this sort of minor-y kind of bluesy little snarl to it. It was like, oh, man, let's pray. Yeah. And he said, can you give me
no one's going to get mad about that.
Yeah, nobody's going to get mad at that. And so he said, and so you went and wrote 7 number 1 singles on that next album, because Speechless had 7 songs that went to number 1. He said, you made my job really, really easy. Now, I don't know how much of that, I didn't remember that story. I didn't remember him saying that or me saying that, but I'm always, through the years, I've always, on the musical side, tried to be a student of just what the language musically is being spoken, particularly then. I'm probably not as much now of going, hey, what's pop music doing, and how can I weave that in so that it sounds, so that it has an accessibility to a large group of music listening people, and that felt like part of the task that was always before me, because I wanted to speak these ideas, Speechless. Fingerprints of God is a good example of a song I wrote for my girl Emily, who's a Baylor Bear. Sorry about that, but you are friends, right? You are buddies.
Yeah, we met
Baylor. Yeah, you've met Emily. I think Emily's part of the reason we're talking, because she was one that helped connect us. So Emily was a little girl, 11 years old, I think, around at that time 12, and she was really battling with just not feeling beautiful. I found her and her mom one day sitting on the floor in our living room, just in tears, crying. I walked in and I'm like, uh-oh, I have a wife and a daughter in tears. I think I need to go work on something in the garage. That's what I need to do. But I stopped and I like engaged. I thought, no, I need to go find out what's going on and just listen, not try to fix it, which is really hard for me. And I sat and listened to her.
Probably most dads.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't we all? That's our job, right? We fix it. And some things, you beyond fixing, but you just listen. And I sat and cried with them because she was just saying, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I don't look like the girls, in their cute outfits at school or on the mannequins at the mall. When I walk by all the windows, I don't, I feel ugly. And the song Fingerprints of God was written for Emily, saying, well, I know I'm a dad, so most of this may go in one ear and out the other, but I'm going to say it anyway, because hopefully in that process, some of it will stick into your heart and soul, that you are a masterpiece. God's fingerprints are all over your life. Of course, Emily would go on to inspire us and encourage us, to adopt and start Show Hope and stuff that we'll probably talk about. All came from that young lady who felt worthless. And so Fingerprints of God is a good example of, it's a snapshot, as all my albums are, of what was happening in my life at that time and what was being said to me and what the Lord was saying to me and what friends and my wife and I were battling through. And musically then, my goal was, how do I, take the music? Emily loved the movie That Thing You Do. If you remember that Tom Hanks movie, is a great movie. Yeah. We loved it. All of us loved it. Emily loved it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to write a song that feels like That Thing You Do around this idea for Fingerprints of God for her. So that was kind of the process throughout a lot of those songs. Like, this is kind of music that I love, music that's inspired me, and influenced me. And then these are ideas that seem to match up with those, with those ideas. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. And as I understand it, when you retour the album now, 25 years later, you're gonna do the album. You're gonna perform the album on the tour. Man, what's it like singing, maybe relearning some of these songs all over again?
And I am having to relearn a bunch of them because, so first of all, in live touring, even by the time Speechless came along, that was probably my, maybe 10th, 11th, 12th album, something like that. So I had a lot of songs. You're talking by that time, 120 songs to pick from, for a concert. So I'm only doing 3 or 4 from this album, 2 or 3 from that album, So even with that whole album, I probably live performed, maybe 4 or 5 of the songs, maybe 6.
I'm guessing Dive is probably muscle memory at this point.
But
maybe not with Hope.
Say,
some of the other.
Right, exactly. Dive for sure. Speechless. And certain ones of those, Be Still and Know. Some of the ones that I just can't not sing usually when I do tour concert. But when I got this idea, I've never done an album, a full album in a concert, and I've seen artists do it. The Eagles, Hotel California. I watched them do that whole record, and I saw Huey Lewis in the News do the sports album.
Amazing.
25 years later. I know.
Awesome.
It was incredible. I'm so thankful I got to see it because Huey,
that's awesome.
Can't sing now. He's got this thing in her ear thing that's kind of debilitating and so sad and just, heartbroken for him and that great music. I mean, he made such great music.
It's great music. Yeah.
And
agreed.
And big fan. So I got to see him do that whole album. Like I think it was 25 years, 30 years later or something. It was an anniversary tour.
Wow.
And I thought, man, that's the coolest thing. And he just like dropped the needle. He even said, we dropped the needle on side 1. He played the whole side 1. And then he said, now we turn the record over and we go to side 2. And they played the whole second side. And I thought, man, that's pretty cool. So never done that before. And I thought, man, if there was ever an album to do that, Speechless would be such a fun record to do that with, because, for me personally, it seems like for so many, that's an album that really connected, so many of the songs with a lot of people. So, but I started then going back and trying to relearn Next 5 Minutes. That's a great
Yeah.
example of one where I'm
Yeah.
going, who wrote this song? What was I thinking? I was clearly young and had a whole lot of energy and very ADD because I'm like, okay, let's do this. Hey, now let's do this. What about the
Yeah.
bridge? It goes like
Yeah.
this and does
There's a
5,
lot
8,
going
and
on.
7, 8.
Mhm.
Oh man. So yeah, I'm having to go back to school a little bit for myself. Fortunately, when you're trying to learn something that you sort of created, it's in there somewhere. It's just cobwebs. You got to get all the cobwebs cleared
Right.
away and get to it. And there it is. Okay, yeah, now I got it. I figured it out. But
Are
it's
you doing the instrumental piece? I believe it's The Journey. Is that
the
right?
journey. Yes. So here's something really cool about this tour. It's we kind of been putting all the pieces together. I had this idea, that man, I would love that album has a lot of orchestration. One of the things that's really special about that album is I got to had amazing arrangements of all these string arrangements, even on the rock and roll stuff. I mean, you got this incredible bridge on the song "The Change," for example, that has this sweeping orchestration thing that you wouldn't typically find in a rock song. It's kind of like, it's like harkens back to, Led Zeppelin or something with these big string arrangements around rock
I
songs.
think is that the one? There's a little girl reading some scripture on that one too.
Yes,
So
yeah,
there's a lot going on.
yeah. That's actually Emily, Caleb, and Will, my
That's
3
awesome.
kids, all doing little scripture
That's
readings
cool.
and that during that bridge.
Mm.
But there was so much orchestration. I thought I would love to bring that element into this concert. And so it actually kind of started with this idea of bringing, I know I can't, it's not like I can take a, 20, 30 piece, 40 piece orchestra on the road. We did those string arrangements in Abbey Road Studios in London, which was another one of those crazy, I got to, record in the Beatles studio and in the room where John Williams had been like the day before recording the newest Star Wars soundtrack.
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world what life am I living? And
So cool.
So these amazing arrangements. And I thought, gosh, I know I can't pull the whole thing off for 12 cities, maybe go do one somewhere, but to really do this, take it on tour. So I have but I do have a small string section, like a string quartet coming out with me to recreate a lot of those moments. It won't be as bombastic and big with all the horns and all the brass. So we're working on doing like a cool kind of reimagination, but still, to me, that melody, that da 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 da, that melody that I wrote for that piece, because that was really my contribution. I had this melody and this idea of like a musical interlude that would just kind of, and the journey. That was a time. Some of the songs, "With Hope," written for friends of ours who lost a daughter around that time in a tragic accident, who would become very, very even more precious to us when we lost our daughter. They were some of the first people to come up our driveway and take us in their arms and take us to the hospital. I mean, it's been an amazing journey with the Mullikins. And in fact, I got a message just this morning. He became a grandpa for the first time. Ray Mulliken did with one of his other daughters. So
great for Ray.
Yeah, but anyway, that I think about like that season of, there were some very, very heavy, weighty things that we had never, journeyed through together as a family and with friends. And so that instrumental piece, like there's some things speechless, that just I can't and don't want to try to put words to, but I still feel. So I kind of had this musical idea that then got turned in this. I think it was Carl. Trying to remember who did the string arrangement. I think it was Carl Verdetsky. Arranged this amazing string piece around that melody. So my idea with the live, version now is to, with the band and the string section, to kind of recreate something that won't probably, it can't be as big and bombastic and cinematic as that was, but we're gonna create something that will still communicate the heart of that and the melody of that, and just be reminiscent for that piece in particular. But the rest of it, we're gonna try to get as close to it feeling like the capturing kind of the emotion of how those songs felt.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I think that made that album really connect for me. I loved your music before, but I was, as I shared earlier, just going through all the highs and lows that entire time. From grief up to, just like having some really great joys. Probably my most significant year with God at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And that album's a big part of it. You've recently experienced a pretty big high. You recently inducted into the Grand Ole Opry. Man, so my question for you is, if you could go back and talk to young Steven Curtis Chapman, picking at the guitar there in Kentucky, what would you say to him to try and share what that moment was like?
Gosh, that's a good question. Because you think about I hear that a lot. What would you tell yourself? I remember actually a great song that Mercy Me did called "Dear Younger Me," like a letter written, and I think of the essence of that song probably is about as good of advice as you can get. It's basically just, hey, don't try to figure it out because you can't. And I love that scripture. We make our plans and God directs our steps.
Yes.
Or that's the translation that I have, I love and kind of hold on to because, I had plans. I was a pre-med major for all of one semester, but I thought I was going to go get a real job because that's what my dad told me I should do. My dad being a great musician, a guy who played music, still does. He's 86, 87. He just had a birthday and he still teaches guitar lessons 5 days a week in Paducah, Kentucky, where I grew up, and still at it. He's been on my albums with me, on my bluegrass album. He taught me to play guitar, taught me Folsom Prison Blues when I was 6 years old. First song I learned on the guitar. Loved, and his dream was to make it to the Grand Ole Opry. That was, as big as he could dream a career ever getting, to get to play on that stage. And so I grew up with a love for that kind of music, bluegrass, folk music, country music. And then gospel music and Christian music became a part of our life especially when my dad and mom really committed their lives to the Lord when I was about 7 years old. And it really transformed our home. My dad, who'd grown up without a father in his life, an alcoholic father who left home when my dad was a baby, died when my dad was a teenager. He met him briefly, like 2 or 3 times, and didn't have any relationship with him. Never had a father figure really in his life because his mom, my grandmother, never remarried, but was an amazing, godly, praying woman. So all of that kind of, growing up with this music, love for, bluegrass and country music. And we'd listen to the Grand Ole Opry from 2.5 hours away. If the weather was just right, the AM signal would make it all the way to WSM. Signal would make it from Nashville to Paducah, and we'd hear it, and my dad would listen. And that was the only music I ever really remember my dad listening to on the radio. He wasn't a radio guy, but if you could get WSM, he'd listen and say, "Hey guys, that's the Grand Ole Opry. Can you hear that?" So I knew even as a kid, that's like the pinnacle. That's as good as it gets. And that was kind of tucked away. So I guess, at that point for me as a kid to go, and someday you're going to get to sing on that stage, and then never, you could have said, and maybe you'll someday actually be a member of the Grand Ole Opry. That would have been the furthest, I would have said, yeah, this person needs to see a doctor, quickly. Cause I wasn't a singer. I was a guitar player. I think the most graspable, if that's a word, thing someone could have said to me is, someday you're going to play guitar in the backup band on the Grand Ole Opry. That I might have said, I'm going to work harder than anybody to be the best guitar player I can be. And maybe someday I could make it there. In fact, when I went to Opryland years later, when I was in high school, graduating from high school, my brother and I went to Nashville and auditioned to get a summer job at Opryland, USA, which was an amusement park. Did you know Opryland? Yeah. Yep. Built around the Grand Ole Opry. So it was the Opry house, the Grand Ole Opry, was kind of the centerpiece. And then around it was this really cool, small, but just such a cool little amusement park, and mainly known for its live music shows. It had like 6 or 8 shows around the park, and all live music, live bands. It was bluegrass, country, show tunes,
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of cool, and some really talented, kids there. I went to audition as a guitar player because I knew I wasn't a good enough singer. My brother was the singer, and I grew up as his backup guy. Herb, my brother Herb Chapman, was the singer, and my dad was a great singer. But so I was, my thing was the guitar, and that's what I really thought. Well, this is where I can kind of make my mark in this, and because I was pretty good. My dad had taught me, and I just spent a lot of time trying to get as good as I could. I started writing songs in high school just as a way to, that really is how I found my voice, because I didn't have the voice my brother had. He could sing anybody's song and people would love it. It's like, man, you're such a good singer. I didn't have that voice. So when I would write, I felt like I started writing songs probably because, hey, this is how I can, they haven't heard it before. I'm not trying to, recreate something that whoever sang. This is all new. So I got a little more forgiveness here with, if it's not I'm not imitating that guy very well. I'm doing my own version of whatever they've never heard before.
This is mine.
And so I got to Opryland auditioning as a guitar player, and realized real quickly these guys are a whole lot better than I am. These are people like jazz guitarists putting sheet music in front of them. They're following all the notes and everything. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I can't do that. And as I was realizing during the audition, I auditioned as a guitar player, and then I went to back up my brother for his vocal audition. And I went and I played with him in front of I remember a panel of about 8 judges sitting there with their little clipboards making notes as my brother sang. And he got through singing whatever his little song, and I'm playing, kind of singing harmony with him in the chorus. And I get done, and it was kind of like an American Idol moment, because the judges said, look now, Steve, your brother, Steve, do you sing as well? And I was like, yeah, but not as good as my brother, but we'll sing something for us. And I sang, a Kenny Rogers song. I'm pretty sure, as I look back now, I think I sang a Kenny Rogers song that I just performed in some little thing at my school. And we both got hired to sing in one of the shows together. I think they liked the looks of brothers, and we looked like Opryland material. And good all-American, clean cut, kind of fellas.
Was that with or without the mullet?
That was pre-mullet. That was I was probably toying with it. It was just a little bit here, but it wasn't full. wasn't full tilt yet. Yeah, because this would have been 1981.
Gotcha.
The mullet really got into full bloom probably by 83, 84, somewhere around there. But that's, So, I mean, all of that, back to, your original question, I think ever imagining that, I would have said, thank you for, your vote of confidence, but that's just not even in the realm of possibility. Can we lower the expectations here? Maybe I can make it to, I used to tell people, the biggest place in Paducah that you would go see a band. If a band came to town, you would go to the Paducah Civic Center, the PCC. And I remember thinking, man, if I could ever make it to the PCC, now that'd be making it, I said, that was pretty much as big as I could dream at that point. So Grand Ole Opry, Carnegie Hall. I mean, those kind of places are like, not even possible.
Incredible, just full circle moments. And you'd mentioned earlier, we connected through Emily, your daughter, who was working for Show Hope. That's actually how we started talking. And I know just from really hearing from you from the beginning of Show Hope, that for you and your wife, Mary Beth, it came from a deeply personal place. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about why adoption became such a huge part of the Chapman family?
We were invited to Bethany Christian Services is an adoption agency, and it's based up in Michigan, friends of ours, very dear friends of ours, who actually was one of the guys sitting in that room when a couple of guys said, "Hey, maybe you ought to just stop talking, be speechless." That inspired, really, in many ways, what would become the Speechless album. So it's another full circle kind of moment here. A guy named Dan Coley, very dear friend, especially at that season. We spent a lot of time together. Our kids were kind of growing up together and wives, and we had a lot in common. And they had adopted, I think, or it started fostering a few kids, bringing them into their home, and we're in the process of adopting, or maybe had. And I think it was domestic at that point, and I believe it was maybe I think I'm trying to remember what their first adoptions were, but they were domestic. They would eventually adopt from China as well. But they said, "Hey, would you guys go to a Bethany Christian Services event with us?" They're doing a banquet gala kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I said, "Man, that sounds great." We had cheered them on. We had supported them, helped them in the process a little bit with one of their adoptions, I think. And we were very convicted, at that point that, look, we are very, very pro-life, but I just don't know that the best way to do this is just to carry signs and picket and make a lot of noise that can very easily be interpreted as shaming and just calling out all the wrong and the bad if we're not prepared to say, "Hey, here's the solution. We're going to take those children and help you in this journey," rather than just tell you all the wrong things about how you're perceiving this this crisis pregnancy or whatever. And I just thought, man, that really resonated with Mary Beth and me, that's the best way we feel like to respond as believers in the sanctity of life and the dignity of every human life. So yeah, let's go and just cheer on this. This was our kind of first invitation into that whole world of adoption and foster care. So we sat at this evening, and I remember just being very convicted that we want to be a support team around these individuals who are called to adoption, and this is one of the ways that we can do it. So that was we were all in with supporting our friends and others. So then Emily goes on a trip, to Haiti with her mom when she's around 11 years old, around the time I wrote the Fingerprints of God song for her. She comes back from that trip with just a broken heart for the fact that there are kids in the world without families, and not just unborn babies, but there are children living, out their life, trying to figure out life, that she had spent time with. Now, it wasn't an idea. These were, living, breathing little girls that were her age, that she's just heartbroken, thinking, what would it be like if I didn't have a family and parents? And
just that
so it broke
compassion.
her heart. Yeah. And she just said,
Amazing.
"Mom and Dad, we got to do something about this. I think we're supposed to adopt some of these children wherever they are." And she's bought a book with her Christmas money. I remember around that time, or a birthday money, she got a book on international adoption, and a big old thick book for 11-year-old. And she's reading from it. "Mom, did you know there are, there are this many children in China, or there's this many children in Africa, this many children in the U.S. And it was kind of took every country and explained sort of, the history of why there were children there without families. She just said, "I think we're supposed to adopt." And of course, she's 11 years old. What do you know? The joke.
Out of the mouth of babes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The truth of it, which has become, we've told it so many times now, it sounds like a joke, but as we said, well, Emily, that's a beautiful thing you should do when you grow up and have your own family and your own, story. But we have 3 kids. We're done. No high chairs anymore. Everybody's out of, car seats, high chairs, all the stuff that comes with little ones. We're sleeping through the night now.
Yeah.
Everybody was actually in school. I think Will Franklin had just started first grade or something, second grade maybe. And we're like, we're in a different season of life now. she starts praying. We bring our pastor, Scotty Smith, over to
Mhm.
sit with us so we can sort of, because we don't want to, we don't want to, pour water on this beautiful
Yeah.
fire burning in Emily's heart, but
Yeah.
this is not our thing.
Mm.
And God just began to change our hearts, and we began to take little baby steps just to say, all right, well, let's pray about what our role is supposed to be. My wife's still going, it's not to be an adoptive mom. That's a frontline thing. And we got so much frontline stuff in our life already with ministry and life
Right.
that I can't imagine that. But as God loves to do, mess our plans all up and say, I gotta, if you want it, you write songs about saddling up your horse and diving in and doing all this stuff.
Wow. Wow.
Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Mm.
But what was beautiful about that for us, and I obviously could go on and on. But I'll kind of finish with this. We had no idea Show Hope was going to grow out of that. It started with us adopting Shohana Hope, our daughter. We came home, found that there were so many families that wanted to adopt that couldn't afford it. And having just walked through orphanages and given us this, tangible, visual of face looking at us saying, can you go tell someone where I am? I'm waiting. And it was just this burned into my wife's heart. And it wasn't just those little beautiful almond-eyed, Asian faces. It was multiplied now because we had gotten this education through Bethany, events, and our daughter Emily and her book on international adoption. We're like, these children are everywhere. They're all over the world. Millions of kids, waiting for someone to say you belong, and we're gonna help you come to understand what that means. Not only you belong to us, a family here, but you belong to a God who made you, knit you together, fearfully, wonderfully made for a relationship with Himself. And we just thought, man, there are Christian families that want to adopt and can't afford it. That's what's stopping them. It's like we gotta help them. That was pretty much how Show Hope started. My wife, who's just this wild, wonderful woman who says, wait a minute, there's a family that's going to adopt and they need help. I'm going to help them. And she starts writing checks, and I'm writing songs not as fast as she's writing checks, basically, is what it came down to. And we said, we need some other people to join us in this, because there are a lot of, so many families that need help and are looking for it. So thus Show Hope started about formally about 22, 23 years ago. It really started when we brought Shohana home. She's 25 now. So it was 25 years ago in March that we brought her home, and really Show Hope kind of started right there at the airport, coming home with her and meeting families that needed help. But it took us a couple of years to get it formalized and really all of that. So about, I guess now 23 years later, it's been one of the most amazing things that God's let us be a part of.
Man, been a big quarter century for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Wow. I love how things like that align. How can the guys, because Steven, you're talking to, a national fraternity with Bucks, they're listening in, but even beyond that, we've got tens of thousands of guys, that are kind of sitting in middle age, couple looking at retirement. How could guys find out more about Show Hope, or even practically support the mission as they're hearing about it?
Yeah, thank you for that amazing invitation. Show Hope is done now. We started out hoping to help 100 families, bring 100 kids from somewhere in the world, U.S., China, Africa, wherever they are, needing a family. And we almost are approaching 10,000 families now that we've been able to walk alongside, specifically with adoption aid support grants that we give families in the process, Christian families of adoption. As you can imagine now, with amazing things happening in Supreme Court decisions, global pandemics, the need is greater than it's ever been. Most of our families, it's shifted through the years. We're giving actually more support to families adopting domestically now than any other country. That's not always been the case. It's like the spotlight kind of has shifted over the years. But currently, and I think that's related to, Supreme Court decision. It's related to a lot of things, but the need has never been greater. We've helped now almost 10,000 families. from 63 countries, or all American, U.S. families, but bringing children from 63 countries all over the world into Christian homes. And the need is greater than it's ever been. We are now also working with families through the emotional needs that come with children that get adopted. We didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And we learned quickly that bringing these children home from some really hard, traumatic places, abandonment, institutionalized care that they, have received, all of the things that come with that. They bring a lot of needs with them, but we believe that if God started this, he's got a plan, and he does. It's us, and it has to, that costs money and takes resources. So we've begun to support families. We've been doing that now for that part of Show Hope for probably the last 15 years. We also provide medical grants to help families that bring through adoption kids that come home with many of them intense medical needs that are going to be ongoing outside of the scope of insurance and all of that.
Right.
But
right.
again, watching these families just show up with incredible faith to just care for these children, that God says, these are children. They may look broken, in ways physically, but they're just as much, are image bearers of God and bring beauty into their communities and their world. And so we've walked with those families through our medical care program. So anyway, all in all, I mean, Show Hope now has grown to about a $10-11 million a year organization, and helping families in all these different ways. So the need is great. The opportunity is incredible. We're supported by monthly supporters through Show Hope sponsors, but we're also supported very much by many families, men and women who just, God's given them a lot, of resources, and said, hey, this is one of the ways we want to build the kingdom of God. So a lot of amazing opportunities that we'd love to share. In fact, some of our just greatest supporters are Texans, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston. A lot of amazing support that's come from Texas and continues to. And showhope.org. Showhope.org is the website to go to. And obviously, Emily, how to connect them with. Emily's still very, very involved with the ongoing of Show Hope. Mary Beth is our board chair. She is the fierce leader of really that. I'm there supporting, cheering, writing the songs, showing up, being involved in the board meetings and all of that. But that we would love to share that opportunity. Like I said, the opportunities there are incredible that lay ahead of us. Pray for Show Hope if you're listening to this and just think, man, this sounds like something that God is in the middle of. I can say absolutely. But because of that, there's a real enemy who is, as we know, never more than now trying to shut down anything that is reflecting the beauty and the goodness and the heart of the Father, especially the Father to the fatherless. So just pray for us for wisdom, for protection, for just for God to continue to give us, to shepherd us and guide us in this, because I feel like the fields have never been more ripe for harvest and for opportunities for us to show up. So just for us to have the wisdom to know what that needs to look like. So thanks for asking.
Yeah. Well, Steven, you're sharing with thousands of men they're going to be praying as they're listening to this on their drive, or they're mowing the lawn or whatever. So awesome. Thank you, man. Yeah. You have those prayers very much.
Thank you, Jared.
Man, just to wrap up today, we've talked about a lot of kind of highs, but just very quickly, as we wrap up the show, what's a creative project of yours that you're still really proud of, but you feel didn't get the attention that you really hoped for?
That's an interesting question. I get asked that often. A few years ago, I wrote an album called Worship and Believe, and it was I feel like everything I've written is worship music, because ultimately anything that, we live our lives as an act of worship. Whatever you do it as an act of worship to the glory of God. So if I'm writing Cinderella, if I'm writing I Will Be Here, if I'm writing a love song, I'm singing on the Grand Ole Opry tonight, actually. I'll be performing tonight on there. I do that a couple of times a month. And,
I think that's part of the gig, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. You got to show up. And I'll sing Cinderella, and I'll sing a new song I wrote about becoming a member of the Grand Ole Opry.
Mm.
But not worship songs per se, but I feel like tonight I'll be worshiping with the gifts that God has given me for His glory. But that album specifically came out of our journey of losing our daughter Maria, and how important having those songs that just declare over and over again, here's what I believe. This is what is true. It's like driving a stake in the ground, holding on.
Yes.
And so those songs came out of that for me. And I thought, I've never really done a corporate worship songs that we could sing together. And in fact, I went to a church in Texas, a good buddy of mine, Max Ocato, to his church in San Antonio, and did a live recording of this project. Taught the songs ahead of time to their congregation there, and they sang with me, and it was a very important record for me. But it was, I'm not a worship artist, and so by the worship community at large, it wasn't one of those where, oh man, let's sing those in our church every Sunday. That was the hope or the thought that maybe I could contribute some of those songs that would become woven into the fabric of worship services. And so in that regard, it was kind of like, maybe I miss something? Could I have done something different or better? But I still, I know it accomplished what it was supposed to. It's just, to answer your question, that's probably the one that comes to mind, that, what the expectation was maybe for it. It was different from what the outcome, that I saw from it. But I still love that album. I still have people, worship leaders, that will say, man, we sang your song on Sunday. What a great song. We are who you say we are, or some of those songs. So yeah.
Man, no, that's fun. Thanks for your obedience in it, and thanks for sharing that. I mean, we enjoyed the album. We've listened to it in the car with the boys, and so
awesome.
Who knows?
Thanks,
it's
Jared.
still out there. And guys, you won't have a problem finding Steven's music on just wherever you listen. So Steven Curtis Chapman, just a happy privilege to talk to you today, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely, Jared. Blessings on you and all that you guys are doing. Thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you, brother. Man to Men is powered by Beta Upsilon Chi, commonly referred to as Bucks. Everywhere, every day, Bucks men are raising families, leading in organizations, and strengthening churches to impact our communities for Christ. You can find out more about Beta Upsilon Chi by transliterating our Greek letters and adding a .org. That's byx.org. This podcast is produced rather well, I might add, by the good gentleman at the Good Podcast Company. For Beta Upsilon Chi, I'm Dr. Jared Musgrove with Man to Men.